Good morning, Justin. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. How are you doing?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Doing all right. My house was ravaged by a bunch of illness, and it was like a war zone here for a while.
I was going to say, we haven't talked for like 2 weeks because you had a corona outbreak and then I went to Phoenix, so.
We had corona, we had hand, foot, and mouth. We've had
man.
absolutely disgusting coughs. Yeah.
Hopefully that means you guys are good for like the rest of the year, though.
Oh.
Catch it all now, so you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wife had it for a week. My daughter had it for a week. Oldest had it for a week. Now we're like 3 weeks in to absolute like just shutdown of the house. And I realized yesterday I took my oldest to grandma's house because we had to go somewhere. We haven't been able Melissa and I haven't been able to leave the house together for the last like 2 weeks, and we went somewhere last night, and so we had to drop her off with grandma, and she walked into the garage. I opened the garage and I looked at her and I said, "Have you been outside all week?" She goes, "I haven't left the house." She hasn't been outside of this house in 5 days, almost 6 days.
You gotta get outside, man.
Yeah. But
even a walk.
Yeah, there's that. You had a really great idea for a topic for today, and I'm looking forward to talking about it. You want to introduce it?
Yeah. So I think the big question for me is kind of everything pre-college as far as schooling goes. And I'm going to emphasize really 15 and a half to 17, 18, like to senior year.
Okay.
Because I think the
sophomore to senior year.
15 and a half specifically just because I'm going to dabble in the driving aspect.
Okay.
Okay. And just the way that schools approach school and how it's changed and kind of why it puts us in the scenario that we're in now, where, and again, it's going to dabble into a lot of other things too, but the way that the education system has changed, the type of courses that we've prioritized, and why we're in this slush fund of bachelor's degrees and nowhere to put them versus the trade shortage that we have, and what keeps the world moving. Is it philosophy and psychology bachelors, or is it plumbers and electricians and builders and things like that? So I think my biggest first question probably to you and to me would be, do you think like the current curriculum is the best use of our time, the best use of our resources, and do you think it yields the greatest potential going forward as to what we do now? For me, when I look at schooling, and you and I have been through plenty of schooling, high school and everything else, it gets you ready for college. That's it. And college classes. It doesn't really get you ready for anything else. I would say one of the big three things for me, like if you think about it, in your life, 15 and a half is kind of, I would say right before that. I don't know when it happened with you. 7th grade, I remember having like a home ec class where we had little kitchens, we cooked stuff, we had that fake baby that whined and cried and everything, which is fantastic to do like right, 7th, 8th grade, right before you get into high school and stuff really gets real. But I also had a technology class where we had blocks of wood, sanded them down, made little compressed cars that shot out. So you had some tangible life things that you went along with history and math and science and everything. And I think it was sophomore year for me, sex ed came up, and it wasn't even a full semester class. It wasn't, it was a couple of days of 1 week, and it was a slideshow of STDs and it wasn't great, man. And parents, we can argue, religious ones a little bit more than others, are super touchy when it comes to the sex conversation. And I don't understand how you can tell me a less informed person is going to make better decisions. So for me, the conversation, or the big change that happens, is that's kind of the first thing we hit. Is you get to the point where everybody's gone through puberty, you're starting to look and view things a little bit differently and feel things differently, and we're not having accurate conversations as to what we do. And the other thing I would say too is that there are no classes on building relationships, as far as sustaining a relationship, as far as
you're talking about romantic relationships?
Yeah.
Okay.
as far as like what would be wrong with having a like an elementary psychology class and just dealing with, hey, because how many times do men say, we just, or do the opposite sexes say, I just don't get where women are coming from or where men are coming from. But if you had somebody early on explain to you that we're not going to approach things the same way, and we're going to have this, we're going to have to understand each other, and the cycles of life and the cycles of people and everything else. I don't see how we don't become more understanding of each other and how we don't have better relationships. But nobody, we go through we go through sex in high school with hardly any education. We go through relationships in high school with hardly any guidance, and those intangibles, if the parents don't want the schools to inform, but if they're not doing their jobs at home, you have a bunch of ill-informed kids across the spectrum of relationships and sex that have no idea what's going on. So I think you can have conversations of those things and keeled enough where everybody kind of accepts the realities of those things and what we can do with them versus like pushing in one direction. A lot of parents will say, "Oh, you have sex ed taught, they're going to go have sex." Well, I can tell you right now, they're probably going to do it anyway. And would you rather them do it knowing a lot more or knowing a lot less? So I think some of them think it's opening Pandora's box and you won't be able to close it. But I'd rather be informed about what's in the box before I open it. I don't know.
Okay. So to your first question, do I think that the curriculum is
And this is
is
one answer. I got a couple other ones, but yeah.
sure, yeah, let's talk about it. Do I think curriculum is up to date? So I really can only talk from my perspective of being in high school 20 years ago. Okay, 20 years ago, I saw, I went to school in Redondo Beach, which is an affluent community. In all honesty, I'm not sure exactly how that dictated the difference between the curriculum that I got versus someone that was in Gardena, someone that was in, Compton or Inglewood or somewhere in Riverside. Like I know that obviously there's curriculum at the state level that is, mandated that has to be taken care of. My feeling for curriculum in high school was that it is average. That it's not in any one direction. They had the ability, they gave us the ability to take AP classes. There were very remedial classes for the people that weren't really keeping up, especially with math and with English. But the core subjects of science and history, everybody takes the same classes there. I took home economics in 8th grade. I had switched schools to Redondo Beach, and that school was far less funded than the school that I went to in Hermosa Beach. And in Hermosa Beach, sixth and 7th grade, we had a technology lab, and we had a ridiculous computer lab that, looking back on it, all these Mac, Apple computers, and our technology lab, we had CNC, like not CNC, but we had like all kinds of plastic cutting and tools, and it was like a not just wood shop, but it was more, different materials type of shop. We had the sanders and grinders and all this kind of stuff, but we also did stuff with Photoshop, and we did things with like the very old creative kind of tools on the computer. We had science project, or not, we had technology project where we had to do the egg drop, where we threw it off the roof and it couldn't crack. We were tasked with creating a contraption to light a match underwater, and we had, we did the racers, the CO2, push
Yeah,
racers and all
I
that
did those,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah. So when I went from a very highly funded school with all these projects and the ability, it was a much smaller population, so obviously the costs of that were a little bit easier to stomach
I was
with
gonna
the
say per,
school.
per capita, yeah.
Right. So the amount of money per capita, then going to a much larger school that was not quite as funded, was a big difference. And I saw the difference. The lockers weren't as nice, and the field wasn't as nice, and the a long way. This, what I'm talking about, 8th grade, I'm dating myself, obviously, it was 25 years ago. And today, my experience, now that I'm living 30 miles away from Redondo. My children are in a district with it's a completely funded district. They're not lacking really for anything. I'm seeing more specialization in high school curriculum. And I will speak specifically about the district that my kids are in. They have tracks that don't start in high school. They start in elementary school and they continue into middle and they continue into high school. My children are in a dual immersion, a language track that will take them from TK all the way to 12th grade. There are tracks for technology, for computers, for different like business type of things. They have a food truck at the high school. And so you learn restaurant business, you learn culinary skills, you learn purchasing and ordering of your goods. And at football games and things like that, they run the food truck. And at school events, they run the food truck. So that is an incredible, not just vocational, but just life skill type of thing that I absolutely love. They have I'm not sure if it's a plane or a helicopter, this decommissioned, that they're teaching avionics and these hard skills so they're not. Yeah, but they also have a ton of tracks that are going to be, your track towards getting a college degree and not going into a vocation. But everything there is pointing towards getting a higher education degree. But they're providing skills, life skills that if college doesn't end up being the track, the path that you go on, you'll have other skills that pop up. My mom, after she stopped working in corporate America, started doing outreach classes with accounting, banking skills, learning how to what your bank account does, what credit does, and how to save money, and how like just teaching people about taxes. And that was a school sponsored event, but definitely was not part of the curriculum. I think that and again, back to like my experience, everything was average. They were catering towards the average and not going in any extreme direction. Now we're seeing magnet schools that are far more hyper focused on a certain direction of the curriculum. They have STEM schools, and they have, like there's more specialty for education. And that, again, that's probably, I don't know if that's the rest of the country, but that's definitely in Southern California I'm seeing. And these aren't all affluent areas that are doing this. I see a lot of charter schools in very average socioeconomic areas. So I do feel like curriculum could be better. I think that it has been worse. And my feeling is that as we move towards this, realization, because there's like the degrees that, I don't know about you, I'm not really using the degree that I got. I am sort of. But there's a lot of people, like you said, the slush fund of bachelor's degrees. We were sold a bill of goods that go to school, get a degree, you'll get a good job, and you'll have a great life. And that just hasn't really panned out for a lot of people. The economy hasn't been the way that we expected. I don't want to say promised, but the way that we expected it to be hasn't been there.
Well, I mean, you'd have to define your time parameter there a little bit. Because like from the economy in general, you're very generalistic about the economy in general. I don't know if you're only talking about the past 4 years or since you graduated. You'd have to.
Since I got out of high school,
okay,
20 years ago.
Because again, 2008, that was a whole other thing that happened, and then we rebounded extremely well, 2009 all the way through to 2019, and then
we rebounded extremely well. But the people getting out of school with degrees that thought they were just going to walk into a job, it didn't happen.
Well,
the people at the top are staying there longer and longer. People aren't retiring. People are working for longer.
That's a problem.
And
yeah, for sure.
That's a problem. And
the other thing too, we're being very generic with degrees too. So I mean, you can't tell everybody that, as far as like discovering all the dinosaurs. Okay, well, you know what? There's only so many people we need with brushes out there finding bones and like doing like, again, we need to be a little bit more specific as to the people that are struggling to find jobs. Okay, well, what did you invest your time in? And was that a field that could accommodate as many people getting this degree as what they did? And,
Sure.
it's, again, it's in a general scope, sure, but I think that if we look into it, there's probably a lot of specific areas where there's a lot of people that went through that one thing, and just the market in general could not handle all the people going after that one thing. And no one
Well,
really told them ahead of time that, hey, you're in a vocation where the demand is not going to meet the supply of everything we have. So
I've met
need it.
I've met a lot of people that have
I only need so
degrees.
many psychologists, man. It's like,
I don't know. Well, but here's the thing is that I was told from an early age that, going to college was important, not so that you would find a specialty, but because employers want to know that you started something and that you finished it, you know? And that that helped me and also hindered me when I entered college, because I wanted to be a math teacher. I was inspired by Mr. Corso at Redondo Union High School, and I wanted to be a math teacher real bad. I did not follow the right path to get the right information. I skated through the first couple of years of my college. I also was having some substance abuse problems back in the day, but uh, I switched my major, and I wanted to be like a drug and alcohol counselor. I wanted to do like psychology. My dad is a psychologist, and I thought, that I kind of do want to do that. And then I changed my major, and then I took all these sociology classes, not sure if I wanted to do sociology, and then I just quit school. And when I went back to, and I finally decided I'm just going to get a business degree. This makes sense. I've been a realtor for a while. Like, I'm going to get a business degree. The whole time, I was told by my parents, I was told by multiple adults in my life that just get a degree. Like that, it doesn't matter if you have underwater basket weaving degree. An employer wants to see that you started something, that you finished something. That's more important than the speciality of your degree. And
but
to a certain,
I think they're not. I think they're not accounting for getting in there and that employer then curating you into the company and to how they want you to be and how they need you to be, versus this job requires this type of education, knowing these types of fundamentals.
sure.
And all the generation before us would stay in those jobs for 30 and 40 years.
So let me.
And they had people these days, they want a degree and they want to start working right away. I
So
did this and I did that. Well, no. Did you
yeah,
intern anywhere? Do
right.
you know what the company is doing? So,
I'm going back and watching Mad Men again,
oh, fantastic fucking show.
and
Fantastic show.
well, I would love to have a bigger conversation
My
about
mom
this
loves
because
that too. Like everything down to the suits,
I know,
like
I know.
perfect.
I'm watching Mad Men again, and there was a line in that. So watching it,
Through
I don't
business
know,
school, dude.
15 years,
Tell you how many.
15 years ago, watching it 15 years ago versus watching it today. I'm in a very different place in my life,
Oh yeah.
life experience, having children, and marriage and everything. Um, Watching Mad Men through this different lens has been very, very interesting. The things that didn't bother me in the show then are bothering me now, and that not really picking up on the nuance of the anti-Semitism in that show, and not picking up on all of the nuances of the really toxic, like, sexism and racism in that show. There's all the undertones. It was that time though. I'm not saying that. One of the lines though is that Roger Sterling says, "I know you went to college instead of serving." And he made this comment about him, Pete Campbell, not like, you better like tone it down a little bit. Like, I fought overseas. Like, I fought in the war. You didn't. I know you went to college instead of serving in the military, but let's remember that, I fought for this country, type of thing. And it really like kind of knocked me off my balance a little bit, because I was like, oh, that's fascinating. There were so many men that served, came back, and then just got into the workforce, and there wasn't a requirement to have a college degree. There wasn't the expectation that that's the path that everybody goes on. That wasn't the norm, and it became the norm. And I think that's what that show did really well, is there was that like where the Indian Ocean meets the Atlantic Ocean, there's this line, and it's like we're all people, but there was these people that had served and these people that had gone to college, and the blending, and how this eventually we just got into we're just enmeshed in each other. And there were people that had degrees that were proving themselves, but the upper brass were the ones that fought in Korea, that fought in World War II, that, you know, didn't have the same education level, but they had
all
something else.
They had the leadership. They had the
leadership
and everything else.
And it kind
of
fucked me up, Justin.
If you get through a war, you can probably run a one floor Bank of America.
Yeah. And
I feel there's no bullets on the 30th floor, you know.
So I'm not going to say it's like for like, but I'm gonna say that my boss and I, great friends, we started off at Starbucks, and the store that we were at, you know, we hit 100 customers in a half-hour period. You know, that for us was wild. And we got through these lines out the door of people that are pissed off waiting for their coffee. Their coffee got met, like, you know.
You literally get the worst of people before that.
You get the worst of people.
That's like, as soon as that first sip hits, they're okay. But everything, then you might as well be in Vietnam, honestly.
I talked to my manager multiple times.
You walk into a Starbucks.
I said, look, the job skills that we learned at Starbucks, not realizing it at the time, have gotten us to where we are right now. My phone can be ringing off the hook, a nonstop call. I don't get overwhelmed. When I worked at the brewery, a bus, like the brew bus, showed up with 35 people. You remember how small Zymergy was, right?
I can believe
we had a line to the door. I was the only person working. There was no one like on the register and pouring beer. Line out the door. The owner came in like an hour, 2 hours later when the bus was gone, and he goes, "Oh my God, I saw on the camera that there was this line out the door." He goes, "You look like you're cool as a cucumber." And I looked at him, I said, "What am I supposed to do? I can only help the person in front of me. I don't care about I don't care that there's people waiting. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you efficiently. I'm going to help you quickly. I'm going to get you, and I'm on to the next customer." There's no need to get overwhelmed with this stuff, right? And that type of leadership, and again, I'm not saying that me working at Starbucks is anything like being in war, but the skills of being able to lead, being able to delegate, being able to handle pressure. I think that there are a lot of kids coming out of high school, especially the ones, you know, now that started high school during the pandemic, or they finished high school, you know, like just at the end of the pandemic, that didn't have graduation, you know, ceremonies, that did these drive-through things, that, you know, that we're getting more and more focused on screens and not on the world in general. I think that social skills have completely shifted from where they were. And because of that, I think that curriculum is moving in a very similar direction. The whole idea of social promotion, and like not holding kids back in school, and, you know, the high school exit exam. There have been changes.
I don't know if you went through it, but I remember the No Child Left Behind thing, which means you could fail, not show progress in a certain thing, and they would
social promotion. Yeah.
Forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what that was serving, other than the emotional aspect of the one kid who couldn't figure it out, that needed more help. Okay, we'll give the kid more help, but don't keep pushing somebody along that is.
Let me tell you. So I'm with you.
It's harder.
I'm with you on that. I never understood that. But let me tell you, being married to a licensed educational psychologist now, I understand a lot more about the intricacies of that. Schools, the school districts are not set up or meant to have kids excel. They are meant to give them a standard education and get them out. So when there are children that are like, I'll use myself as an example. I skated through school. I was just smart enough to not fall behind, but I was just lazy enough to not excel. And so if my parents had come in and said, "Hey, you know, I know that he has more potential. I want him to get services at the school would say, "He's not failing. You know, like he's doing okay."
Like you got to
That
be
was the bar. So there were plenty of kids that I knew that obviously had behavioral problems or they had learning disabilities that were undiagnosed, and I saw the night and day difference.
Especially way back then.
Right. But there were kids even in like my third, fourth, fifth, grade that clearly had learning disabilities. And I remember from one year to another, they started getting services. They started getting an in-room aid for them, or they'd get pulled off into small groups to work on stuff. There were kids that I saw in early elementary school that I remember my dad saying, "Oh, they're going to be a convict. Like they're not going anywhere. They're going to be on a dark path, you know." And I thought, "Oh yeah, like they're always acting up in class, da, da, da." And one of them is extremely successful now. He's a business owner. He's got multiple streams of income. I mean, like he's of like visionary now, and I'm so impressed by this guy. But this was a kid that I thought for sure was going to be like a Columbine shooter at some point. But this is the thing, is that if the school wants you to be at par with the minimum standards. They are not trying to get you straight A's. They're trying to get you to B's and C's. Like D's is acceptable, but the fact that
yeah, but as soon as you get into college, it's not. Like even I found
college is easier than high school.
Well, I found out that in college, a C+ prerequisite. Anything under a C+ and you can't move on. I had to take accounting twice because I got a C and not a C.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, how many things in our world are to meet the minimum standards? My whole job, general contracting, everything else, code is
just to meet the minimum standard. Yeah.
You can go above it, just can't go below it. There are so many things where the bare minimum, is like even when we talk about before we started, you brought it up as far as like a minimum wage not making whatever. Okay, well, it's the minimum, and people deflate or they deflect, and they don't differentiate enough between minimum and livable wage. So, because the livable wage is going to be accurate to the standard of living of where you are. Minimum is not livable. No one ever said in economics or anywhere else as far as awarding a minimum wage that this is a livable wage. No, this is the minimum acceptable that we've agreed we can pay. Everybody is searching for a livable wage. They're not searching for minimum wage, and that's a complete different thing. And I think that's what sets us up for failure a lot when we talk about minimum wage increases and everything else. Firstly, it's people that don't understand economics, where if you raise minimum wage, it's not going to help. You're going to inflate everything. There is no positive thing for raising the minimums, because it's all that's going to do is raise everything else in the meantime, or it's going to eliminate things altogether. It's going to be self-checkouts. It's going to be computers, because those require no maintenance, no healthcare, no anything, just engineers. So you're going to have one engineer for 5 systems versus 5 actual employees you got to pay. So
yeah,
this,
I think that this ties back into curriculum, though. I mean, because there are people like me that went to school 20 years ago that are there are people that I know that I went to high school with that immediately after high school, maybe they didn't even walk, they didn't graduate high school, but as soon as we were all out of school, they were working at gas stations, they were working at very low, zero skill type of positions. And I remember 5 years later, 6 years later, like still seeing them in these positions. And my thought was always, what are you going to do? Like not in like a scolding way, but like, I'm really concerned and curious. What is your life going to look like? Where do you go from here? Because we're not teaching life skills. And I think that even someone on minimum wage, I think that I'll call myself, I had shitty jobs getting out of high school when I was working through school.
I never had a good one. I
didn't know how to budget.
Service for a bunch of years.
I didn't know how to budget. I didn't understand. I never kept track of my money. And I think that's something that I know, like I said, my mom has gone into schools all over LA and done financial training, how credit cards work, what interest means, like what like about personal loans and about like you like creating a budget for yourself. The most successful people that I've ever met that are much older than me they know where their dollars and cents are going. They're aware of where their money is coming in and where it's going out. And I didn't get on that train until very recently about keeping track of where my money's going. There were years of my life that I made a shit ton of money in in my terms, and I never once looked at my bank account. I paid my bills, I got out, and I think that that false sense of security did not serve me, because I got into a position as a realtor where my income was very inconsistent, and it was feast or famine. And for me, when I got into a feast, I didn't want to get out of it. And so when things were trickling off, I never looked at my savings and went, okay, let's figure out how long I have. What is my burn rate? I never looked at that. I never made more money in my life when I worked at Nordstrom in a 6 month period. At that time, this is like 2008, it was like right before the crash. 2008, I made like 50 grand in like 6 months. It was crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that speaks to another thing as far as how business operated back then,
Yeah,
commission based versus, right?
9.8% commission, man.
I
I
worked,
would intentionally get meal break violations so that I could leave early because I made my money for the day and I wanted to get the hell out of there. I had never made more money. I never once looked at the money I made and thought, okay, where, like, all my bills are getting paid. That's fine. Where am I putting the rest of my money? I'm spending it. I'm not putting anything into savings. I'm not doing anything to further the story of my life. And then when I lost that job, I kept spending like I had that money, and I was broke within 3 months. And I've had wild highs and wild lows in my life, financially and lifestyle wise. And there were so many things that I wish I learned. My mom, I'm very happy and fortunate. She taught me about how credit cards work. She taught me about when your statement comes versus when charges get made, and how to float something for a month. You have a big purchase, da da da. Like, I learned about credit. My mom co-signed on a credit card with me when I was a teenager to build my credit. It had like a $200 limit on it, and she was like, "Look, I give you money for, you know, lunch and it's like that. Just use your credit card, and I'll pay it. You're building up your credit." And so by the time I got to 18 and I got a good credit card, I had a really great credit history. When I even at Nordstrom, I was 19 years old, 20 years old, and I went and applied for a Nordstrom credit card, and the lady's like, "Oh, you're probably going to get a really low, limit." And she's like, done all the paperwork, and she goes, "Oh, you got a $10,000 limit at 20 years old, 19 years old, I had a $10,000 credit card. That's not, that's a little ridiculous, but it's a testament to like this financial literacy that most people are just not getting."
well, there's some people now, right? Where I think if again, I don't have kids or anything like that, but if I ever got into it and I had credit cards, see how I would instantly not just make them an authorized user. They don't even know they have the card. They don't even know it exists. But if I put them on a black card at 1 years old, they're gonna have 18 years of credit history by the time they turn
Yeah,
that age.
yeah,
Same thing with like Roth IRAs. Okay, non-taxable gains you can max contribute to every single year that just accrue. What happens when they turn 18? You've been devoting $5,000 a year with interest to that thing. But I think it goes back into, the kind of stuff we're going to talk about. I mean, the next one after we hit, puberty and sex education and all that other kind of stuff, the next thing would be driving. It's like 15 and a half. But how often do you even hear about 15 and a half year olds anymore getting their learner's permit and driving around town? I know when my mom was in school, we're going way back, but I finished at the same high school she did. They had shop classes, they had auto mechanics classes where you could go in, learn how to change your oil, change your tires, and then they had a bunch of beater cars that you would drive around in the parking lot of the school to learn how to drive. Why that's not an elective, why that's not a thing anymore is insane to me.
that's,
The fact
well,
that you can
For California specifically, it's insurance, it's
the
liability.
the fact that you can, well, and then how would it not help all that? If you start educating people on driving and all these things before all that, they're more educated drivers, they know better. The more educated we are, the less we have to supplement with things that might go wrong. And, for me, there's no reason why there should not be right at that age. They say, hey, in life, in this country and whatever else, you're of the age now where you can go to the DMV, you can take a test, and you can get your learner's permit. Go around with your dad, go around with your mom, go around with whoever, and learn how to drive. At 16, you can get your license. The amount of independence that you would get. And then if every day you were going in for a semester, every day, and you were learning about the car, like Japan has one of the lowest, I think it might be the lowest crash rate in the world. They have to go to a driving school. It's a whole campus that you go to. Firstly, nobody can drive until they're 21, I believe. Day one, all of day one is how to properly put your seatbelt on. Okay, well, when you break it down that much and then you realize no one gets in accidents in Japan, it's all about education. It's all about how you were taught, how stringent, and we're not going to talk about discipline standards in Japan, how you're taught and everything. It is directly correlated to life and what happens afterwards. So this whole fact that, I mean, AAA wouldn't exist if everybody knew how to change their freaking tire.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, they carry around batteries and stuff. Like, we can't get away from that, right? But there is no realm where anybody should not be able to change their own tire. And if your parents are could do it at home, let the school do it. Have it as an elective, and then what if you have one of those kids in those classes who ends up starting his own business in automotive because he had a good teacher or enjoyed cars or did whatever? I mean, you're opening up, there's no other class for that person. And you're going to tell me we don't need mechanics? Hell yeah, we need mechanics. So you have to have the class. You have to have a teacher there to be in the car with you with both, both steering wheels and both sets of pedals, like the
Yeah.
old school ways of learning how to do it. I don't see how that can't be a paramount of education in the life cycle of kids. I think it's
I don't disagree that that's an
Sure.
important thing, Justin. It's just that most schools are already working on a shoestring budget, and now
You can't
that
say that while saying yours is also fully funded.
but no, but this school district is not like other districts. I mean, they have universal TK. That you're, as long as you're 4 years old, you can enroll in TK. They have free breakfast and free lunch. You still have to like apply for the subsidized lunch just in case you qualify for it. But regardless of you qualify, everyone gets breakfast and everyone gets lunch. There's a bunch of schools now with SNAP being turned off that are also doing dinner for kids after school. And they're like, feeding the kids became more important than anything. And because they did a lot of studies that said that kids that eat breakfast are more engaged and they're just better in general throughout the day.
Well, not to mention,
And
publicly provided food sucked in general, so we had to change that
yeah,
regardless.
my kids are pretty happy with the breakfast and the lunch. I mean, I get the menu at the first week of the month. They have some pretty incredible food that they're doing.
You don't want
And
a Billy Madison experience where you go
no,
back in just for the
no,
food.
but not every district has the funding for that, and I think that
I,
they're. Oh, but hear me out. Hear me out. So they're putting money into the programs that, again, benefit the average. They're not like, because that, again, even though it's not like a crazy collegiate endeavor, it's kind of a end of the spectrum type of thing. It's vocational. I think that offering vocational stuff is super important. There are schools that still do that, but it is definitely not the norm the way that it used to be.
the one thing I will say again is that in this world, especially in California, it's going to be rare to find someone that doesn't drive, that doesn't have a car. So if we're talking about the general scope of stuff, everyone's going to have that experience at some point, And you talk about funding, I guarantee you there are places that would donate cars, that would donate tools, that would donate stuff. So where we say that, oh, we need we need all this stuff to pay for stuff. No, you don't. You need a group of people that can outreach to all these places and say, hey, we're gonna do this stuff. And if you're gonna tell me LAUSD, the largest school district in the world, cannot fundraise and cannot reach out to large conglomerates, or that those companies wouldn't want the recognition of donating to LAUSD to get
Then
more
why don't they?
drivers, because they're devoting all their time and energy to the other things that you just said. They're not prioritizing
No,
that.
I'm saying the donors. Why don't the donors do that then?
Is anybody asking them? I don't know.
The most effective big time programs that I've ever seen were championed by outside donors that donate to the school, and they build a whole building, or they build a whole program around a certain, like in Torrance with Honda, and like they're in places that have a big corporate kind of presence that's like that city's known for. You always see that. And if that, I mean, why isn't it happening? It's the same thing. Like they put a number on how much it would cost to fund free lunch or free breakfast for every kid in America, and like the number is quite lower than the net worth of the top 20% of this country. Like if donation was the only hurdle to this, the only barrier for entry, it would happen. There's always companies that are looking for tax breaks. Why don't they do it then?
Well, again, I mean, we can assume they just don't do it for whatever reasons, but we don't know
Right.
what the agenda is. And again, I would say, what are the school districts catering to as far as curriculum? And
Sure.
if this has been determined as not an essential thing that they deem as an essential, then why would you be devoting resources to it? For me, I'm tired of my car insurance going up every single year. Every single 6 months it goes up.
Sure.
I have to wonder why. Well, if there's more uneducated drivers out there, or if we have less automobile mechanics to make things or and to fix things, then all the prices are going to go up. And I think at some point, if I did a whole campaign on how to get car insurance more affordable, this would be paramount to it. It would be, you guys need to be more educated drivers. We need more people in the field so the supply of damaging and everything else goes up. Right now, everything in that field is constricted. The education on it, the supply chain of it, everything is constricted. What spurs change is when it finally gets to the precipice of that issue. And like Gardena High School in general, it's one of the it's one of the largest schools in LAUSD. They have wings of buildings that used to be shop classes that are empty. They're used for storage now. They don't even have to build another building. They have to take the shit out that's in there and put other stuff in. That's all they get to do, And if you're saying that you can't go to again, get beater cars. They don't need, honestly, it's better if you give them cars that don't have cameras, that don't have sensors, because they would be better drivers. And as soon as you get a car that has all that, driving is pretty easy. So I really don't think it's as hard or as difficult or require nearly as much money as what it is. They're just not prioritizing it. They're buying computers. They're buying all that other stuff instead of devoting to that. And that's where I would say I would change it. I would add that. And again, that's just one, we're
Sure.
in on
I
time.
have a feeling that we're moving in that direction, though.
I hope so,
I
honestly.
I don't think it's going to be today. I don't think it's going to be necessarily tomorrow. The I talk to a lot of people, a lot of the realtors I talk to on a daily basis, that their kids and their grandkids are not going down the those paved paths that we did and that they did. The fact that the high schools around here have pivoted, they've realized that kids aren't enrolling in like the sports programs as much, or like they're looking for ways to increase engagement. They have a full-on esports team at all the high schools.
I've heard about that stuff too.
That's like competitive, really competitive. And there's the schools. I remember when I was in middle school, going into high school, they started a hockey league, which with like an intramural hockey league.
I was on a hockey team in middle school too. Yeah.
So, in the beach cities,
other middle schools, yeah,
it got real popular because Tides in Redondo,
yeah,
I did too. I did for like 7 years. I got really, hockey had a big like kid boom for a while.
It did.
I think that's a big reason why a lot of us are into hockey.
We played at Wilson at that big rink over there, but
yeah, we played at Lincoln and then we played at Adams Middle School.
Okay.
They started an intramural hockey league and then that kind of died out. But this esports thing, I think there's legs to it because there's money behind it and companies are putting money into it and they're funding that. So yeah, they are buying computers and I will agree they're not putting it into vocations, but I do think that that is on the horizon. That getting back to this, the fact that these schools these high schools I'm talking about, they have full on tracks that are business related, they're entrepreneurial. I think that's the delineation that I'm finding, is that learning how to be a mechanic is great. Learning how to have your own shop is a whole different thing. And I think that that is the union of pushing for education. Great. That's wonderful. There is a big section of kids that probably should go to college. There's also a big section of kids that should learn a trade. because they can make a lot of money. They don't need to go to school. There's people that are horrible test takers, very, very smart, horrible test takers that are not going to make it in college. And they're very smart and they can learn things. And if they can learn how to do something that doesn't require a degree that will make them a lot of money, that's great. You look at drug dealers are some of the best business people you've ever seen. They are not educated in any possible way.
Just hustle.
But if you teach someone how to hustle, you teach someone how to set up a business, you know, that I'm trying to remember like the details of the story. There was a kid that came by offering to mow lawns in this neighborhood.
I think
This guy was like kind of impressed that this kid was like 12 going door to door. And this guy was like, yeah, like come and mow my lawn. And he noticed that this kid, oh no, I'm sorry. It wasn't mowing lawn. It was washing windows. He did it for like $5 a window or whatever. And he was, 3 days a week, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, he was going and knocking on doors. And then he's like, all right, we're going to come out next week and do all the houses. And he got like 10 or 15 houses on the block. The next week, that 12-year-old kid didn't show up to do the windows. It was some 16-year-old kid. And he goes, what, how, he goes, oh yeah, he told me that he'd pay me $3 a window to do all this. This kid was a 12-year-old entrepreneur. And when the guy came back the kid came back to collect the money, he asked him, he's like, how come, what's the deal with that? And he goes, well, I hired someone else to do the work. I'm the sales guy. And that's the type of spirit that is going to save our country.
Yeah, the only problem is that there are a lot more of the 16-year-olds than there are the 12-year-olds.
Yeah, but guess what? That fucking 16-year-old had a job.
Yeah,
and that 12-year-old was a job creator.
No, yeah. I mean, you even brought it up right now as far as like the person having the shop, right? Have the shop. Well, yeah, but he needs workers. So we still need the tradespeople. You need entrepreneurs. There's no such thing.
But just like bars,
entrepreneur without tradespeople to work for them. It would
correct.
Be a job with
bars don't want people that went to bartending school. It's one thing to like do vocational stuff in high school, but like the number of people that go to UEI or go to the auto trade schools. I think there's a lot of people that work at dealerships and stuff that didn't do that. They went in and they did apprenticeship type of stuff. They worked in a shop local and they moved their way up. I think we're missing a whole apprenticeship type of society. That used to be the basis of everything was you go in, you shadow someone, you work under someone. Tattoo work works that way. You can't touch a tattoo machine until you've apprenticed for a year, unpaid, and done grunt work and cleaned and done all this stuff. And then by the time you get that tattoo machine in your hand, you are grateful and you understand the way that the whole shop works. You don't just walk in as like, oh, I'm an artist and I'm big shit. You're nothing.
There's no tattoo school with a degree where all of a sudden you show up and you can tattoo.
I wish that real estate was this way.
People come in like this or whatever. This was like 11 hours of my life.
Yeah.
The rest of my life. Like, no, the dude needs to know what he's doing.
Yeah. Look at.
I mean, down for 11 hours and like
even though there wasn't a formal apprenticeship for your job, you worked under the people that you work for. You learned the ropes, and then you went and said, "Okay, I'm ready to get my GC," and you went and did it. Like you're not able to just walk in and get a GC. Like that, you need experience, right?
Gary had to sign off on my year's experience. Yeah.
Being a real estate broker is the same way, but being a realtor, there's no apprenticeship to it. Being an appraiser, you have to do apprenticeship. You can't appraise anything over a certain value until you've done 3,500 hours of this, and then there's another level, and there's another level to be a general appraiser. I wish that real estate was more that way. I wish that a lot of jobs were more that way, where you learn that you are not special. You are one of many, and you need to understand your place, and you need to understand the gravity of what you're doing, even though it's not like brain surgery.
It's a really hard thing to turn around when their parents have told them they're special their entire lives.
I know.
So I mean, we have 18 years of parents with princes and princesses where they can't do anything, and then all of a sudden they get to the real world, and it's a shock that it's not all about them.
I can't tell you how many parents I talk to at the dance studio or at extracurricular stuff it's like, oh yeah, my kids don't like sushi, but they really love poke, and like the, you know, like the this like the
Shitty, man.
and I want to like take a step back and go, can you imagine being 14 and telling your mom that you don't like cold fish, and you'd much rather have you know, slightly cooked fish, and like I don't like chia seeds in my acai bowl, mom. Like the
I
you
never
know,
had so much decision making, man. Like I didn't live in the world of you know, and I've been around some pretty progressive places and stuff, and parenting just with my own personal, you know, the past
yeah.
couple years, and it's nauseating how much power and decision making and everything rests with kids these days. Like
I'm
the
not immune to
entitlement
this.
of
I
like,
have 3 children that want 3 different meals. It
I made
happens.
tacos tonight. It's in there. Go ahead and grab a plate if you want.
Yeah.
Like that's
I've moved the needle a little bit into that direction of like, well, no, this is what we're having tonight. You know, let's talk about side dishes. You don't want mashed potatoes? That's fine. You can have, you know, steamed vegetables. We're gonna make up for this tomorrow, though. You're gonna have a starch tomorrow, like the, you know, like the. But I'm, you know, and it's hard. I think that becoming a parent, you do get a little bit soft
sure, of
and
course.
not as like hard on your kids. You don't want your kids to you know, that pendulum swings hard. You
But
know, I didn't have
it's
I didn't have a hard childhood, but I definitely had my dad was more militant than I am as a parent, but it did inform
that's
me to
I think
be a bit
that's a trending
right.
yeah.
But I am more I am more stern with my kids than I expected to be as a parent. I've grown into a much different father than I thought I was going to be. And I think part of that is like
I
having girls,
think that's pretty synonymous. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
you know. I don't know how I would be as a boy dad. I really don't. I talk to my wife about that all the time. I don't know.
I feel the opposite spectrum.
Yeah.
Uh, boys, man, there's not a single thing that worries me. There's not things.
I fucking love being a girl dad though. I really do.
Well, the other way too is that recently told
Yeah.
someone else that I would be one of those guys that again, if I were to have a girl, right? I know my place. I know my lane. I know the things that I know and the things that I don't know. And I would hope that I chose a woman to do that with that I believe is the best woman in my life. That's the woman that I want my girls to emulate. And I would love to see her succeed in raising our girls. You know, if I'm around, I'm here. Let me show you what a man does with the woman that he loves. Like, let me show you how I treat your mother and that I'm always here to protect you and I'm here to do these things. But I would like to see my wife succeed in raising our girls in the image that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with this person too. You know, I want my girls to be like my wife and have a little bit of me. But I would like the inverse for my boys. I would hope that I'm the biggest male figure in their lives and they would emulate me and then my wife would be there to soften the edges and to do what they need to do. I don't mind the genders and the swinging of like, I'm not a girl, I'm not a woman. I don't know what you've experienced and what you've gone through, but you know what? I married this amazing woman who absolutely does. And I'm
I
gonna
mean,
support her and the stuff that she has.
yeah.
Give me my little 10, 15%, give me my little bit, but girl, run with it. Like
Let me speak to that a little bit. Let me speak a
you
little
just
bit.
absolutely know.
I am totally with you. I love that my wife is like the, you know, girly mom. Was I like being a girl dad for a lot of reasons, but one of the reasons is that I know the way that I was as a teenage boy.
If we go by that standard, man,
I know the way that I was as a
I wasn't
boyish
that bad.
as a boyish man in his 20s. Like I know the way that I was. I treated women very well, but I also was, you know,
A
out
teenage
there.
boy.
Okay? I know the way that I was. I know the way that I was as a child too. I had very flipped gender roles. My mom was always the breadwinner. My dad and I were the ones you know, my dad was the one making dinner every night. He was taking me to school and picking me up. I had very flipped
I
gender
had
roles.
two gender roles. I wish my dad was doing as much as yours did,
Sure.
but that's not what was happening.
I I thrive in being a little bit more domesticated. But what I found in my wife now is that the places that I lack, she excels, and some of the places that she lacks a little bit, I excel, and we are like a key and a lock. There are things like doing the dishes. She doesn't mind doing the dishes. I love doing the dishes. Great. This is the thing. Doing laundry, like she would prefer to do the laundry because like I'm not always the best at changing it over. There are plenty of things.
You have stuff. You have stuff in the
This is
washer
it.
right now. Do you have stuff in the washer right now? It could be in the dryer.
Keeping this house going, this family of 5, is not a one person fucking job. It's not. It's impossible.
If it takes 2 to make it, it takes 2 to do everything.
Right. So, but this is one of the reasons why I like being a girl dad, is because I get to do fun stuff with the girls. They're doing dress up and playing with stuff. They have a great time with their mom. I can be there to do fun stuff, but I also have a different perspective, I think, because I'm a stepdad as well. There have been things that I have done, experiences that I've had with my stepkids that I was like, oh man, I'm so glad I got to experience that with them. And then I have this like devil on my shoulder that's like, oh man, you're an asshole for not for their like for taking that away from their dad. And I go, like, I taught the oldest one how to ride her bike.
Yeah.
And I had this like beautiful father-daughter moment, like running next to her and like letting the bike go. And I was as happy as I was, it was immediately kind of like leveled by this realization that like, oh man, like I experienced that joy that her dad didn't.
Yeah.
And that
Well,
like,
unfortunately, that's going to be more common as we go forward too.
right?
This divorce is more common now.
I know.
Houses are more common now. Like even for me, the relationship I've been in the past 4.5 years,
Yeah.
she's got a son, and the
Yep.
dad's around, but he's not really around. So there's so many things that I've done with that kid where he hops on the Mustang and we go for a ride, or I'm playing baseball with him. He's only playing hockey now because I took both of them to
Yeah.
his hockey game, and like
Yeah.
and I just look at that and I'm like, you know what? There's a guy out there who had a son who's just not here. And I don't think I would ever, again, because you don't know what you're gonna get, right? And like for me, I look forward to having a son, a little shit just like me, and that I can, roam around with and stuff. And this guy got one, and he's just like,
I
no,
think
no.
I think there's a portion of that I can speak to, is that I think that don't we pick our partners, and sometimes I think that we don't look long term enough at what type of parent that partner is going to be. They're a great partner for me. Do we align though with the way that we want to
Well, that's
be
a
parents?
hard thing to do
Because
because you even changed once you had kids. So sometimes, I mean, you try to project as much as you
I
can.
know,
Sometimes you
I
never.
know, I know, and unfortunately, it happens more often than I wish it did. That having kids then completely flips the relationship on its head, and there are stresses and pressures that you could not have even imagined were going to come up, and it's hard. And you're right that there is an aspect, there is a father out there that's not having these experiences with his son as a result of this. I love the fact that at this point, my my stepkid's, like father is in the picture, and like we went trick-or-treating with him and his girlfriend, and like he's around, and like he, like that we're able to have a cohort, if you will. And there's it's not just me and it's not just our family of 5. There is an extended support system that, like, I think I'm sure there's 6 different adults that we coordinate the schedule for to take care of our 3 kids over the course of a week. And I am so appreciative of that. That's a very important thing. Bringing this back to curriculum, you talk about home ec, like the learning to cook. That's like a semester of school.
Yeah. Well, ours was 50-50. It was like cooking and stuff like that, and then we had the whole baby experience of like teaming up with somebody and having this little automated baby that would scream at you.
I think I was long enough for me that I think it was a sack of flour. We didn't have the baby.
You had an egg that needed to be uncracked by the time you
Something
cooked.
like that. Yeah. Uh,
I think ours
but they,
was, you know what? I think ours was split. It was like fall was home ec and that, and then spring was technology where we had to do the car and build stuff. It was like
You know,
flip flop.
they
It
did.
wasn't a whole year of that. I don't think there's enough information in a whole year.
They offered a sewing class in high school, and I remember it was a lot. It was 99% female, but there were a couple boys in there that I remember being like, oh, like that's really interesting. That's really cool. I was always too like, oh, it's like sewing class, you know. But the kids,
You were macho? Wow.
the boys that did the sewing class, I remember later in high school when like I got like really into punk rock, and they're like sewing patches, and
Yeah.
they're like, oh, they rip their jeans, and they're sewing their jeans up, they're hemming their own pants and all this stuff. And I remember being so like it was so admirable.
Oh,
It's like, that's
envious.
awesome. You didn't oh no, it wasn't a sewing class, it was called fashion and design.
Okay.
And it was not only, it was like learning about patterns, it was and like, and from a creative, because like I wasn't, I loved creative stuff in high school, but I didn't get into doing creative things like, you know, like Photoshop and video editing and all that stuff until much later. I wish that I had gotten more into that, because they learned about color theory, and they learned about things that are not just specific to fashion and design, they're just kind of specific to just creativity in general. And you know, that there were so many electives that I chose not to do because I was more interested in making out with girls and getting high and playing my bass. You know, I had the wrong priorities in high school. A lot of this, I think, comes down to mentorship and counselors. The counselors that I had in school pushed me just enough to not like, so that I had a full list of classes, but they allowed me a little bit too much leeway. I was allowed as a senior. I had a 0 period internship, and then I had a 5th period internship, and I didn't have a 6th period. So on Mondays,
You showed up to
I
school
went to
for 3
school.
hours.
On Mondays, I went to school from 8:55 until 12:20, and on Tuesdays, I went to
Oh,
school
wait, that's
for,
way too much unsupervised time for you.
yeah. So my senior year, I didn't go to school after 12:20 the whole year.
Yeah, nothing good happens.
I had like a college, like a lazy college student schedule my
Should've
senior
been
year of high
working,
school. Did that serve me at all?
probably
No,
not.
not at all. And I look back on that because I was like, oh, I took the minimum math. I got to algebra
Extracurricular
three,
stuff.
you know, algebra two. I took the minimum science. I did all the minimum shit to go. And part of that was my parents were like, you're going to community college. You're not going to university. And I said, okay, you know. And I talked to my wife. I talked to like my wife is big in education, and her sister is a director at a college, and you know, like education is hugely important to them. And I didn't get pushed by my parents at all, and I not in the ways that I think they wished that they did. You know, by the time I got out of high school, my dad had a master's degree, and shortly after that, he got a doctorate. But he was really tied up in his own path of education at that time, and my mom was working full time. She was out of the house all the time. So like you know, I was like a latchkey 18-year-old, you know, 17-year-old, and
Which is great, right?
which is a horrible idea,
No.
absolutely horrible. The fact that I didn't get anybody pregnant, I didn't get any STDs, and I stayed out of jail is amazing.
Yeah,
That's like dodging a bullet.
a
But
couple.
oh, man, this is the thing though, is that I think that getting back to like apprenticeship, mentorship, counseling, I think that if we funded or focused more on this, like the student experience, what are they offering? Oh, you want to have a free period? Like for what? What are you going to do? Is it work experience? What are we doing? I learned recently in this last few years, since I met my wife, that having extracurriculars and keeping busy is outrageously important. When I first met her, and our oldest daughter is like in, you know, 15 hours of dance every week, I was like, that's excessive. And then I realized like she didn't have time to fuck around. She didn't have time. She can't get into trouble.
Well, I mean, that's what sports. I mean, you say all this.
That's what sports
I
do.
was in sports. I was in sports my entire life, so it's like I couldn't. Even if I had a free 5th period, I have 6th period. I got baseball
Yeah,
practice. I don't have time to like.
yeah,
Sports too has that minimum. You need to have a minimum GPA to participate. So like, okay, well, I have to keep the grades up, because it was one of those things where like I want to play baseball, so I have to keep my grades up. And then it just got to where, you know, school wasn't super hard for me. I never really really struggled, you know. In
Yeah.
college, I was on the dean's list. It's not, I didn't, but I was never only school. I would go to class from 8 to 12. I'd have an hour lunch. I have baseball practice from 2 to 4 or 5,
Yeah.
and then I worked at Best Buy to close the night out. You know, I didn't even have time for homework. I didn't have time for like whatever else. So it's just constantly keeping busy. And I think the kind of like the last issue really that I would express is when you're a senior and you're about to graduate, I feel like there are more paramount things of being an adult around here that I think go left untalked about. The big things, right? Okay, well, you're 18. Well, now you can vote. Okay, well, you're 18. Now you can get called for jury duty. Okay, well, you're 18. Now you could have your own job and file your own taxes. And if the minimum standards are algebra 2 and like government and whatever else, there's no reason. Like, you know, and no one even talks about how, oh, like everybody uses TurboTax and they use all, a tax person. If you make like 46,000 or like 56,000 and under, you can file for free with the IRS. You don't need to pay. You just need to know how to fill out the form. I'm sorry, but if you're on to trigonometry in high school, you can figure out accounting. It's not that big of a deal, but you're not taught it. I didn't learn accounting until college, which is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Senior year, I would almost say should almost be like I would say have
Life skills.
all of your minimum stuff done by junior year. Most people can. That whole senior year is let's go to the courthouse and see what it's like to serve on jury duty, which I did. I went to the Torrance courthouse. I remember going. Then it's like let's go to or we have an accounting class. Or you have a whole, I had one government class that talked about, oh, this is a law. It was one semester. You're telling me our political system all of it can be talked about in one semester? But all these things that establish you as an adult, these are the things that you need. The second you leave, you're going to need these things to succeed. No one is taught. And your finance class, 100% needs to be talked about. You cannot, because the big thing, right, is if you're going to push entrepreneurship, you're going to have to set up your own investments and savings. The company is not going to do it for you. So you need to know about Roth IRAs. You need to know about the stock market. And everybody's afraid of the stock market. And if you ask everybody that's afraid of the stock market, the number one reason they'll say is they don't know enough.
Right.
Educate them then. You need to
Yeah.
know about all these things so you're not relying upon them. Your whole senior year, at least the entire last semester, should be nothing but welcome to the world. These are the things that you need to know. And nobody is doing those things
Yeah.
nearly as efficiently or as well as they should. They keep
A lot.
prioritizing
Oh,
English and science and like sure you need to know those things, but not everybody is going to be a nuclear scientist. Not everybody is going to be a Harvard mathematician or whatever. You need to start catering to the 80% of people that are going to need these basic life skills to get so they don't have to rely on all these other companies and all these other things to help their life function.
that's what the point of our school is, though. That's why school was set up, was to create workers. School is not set up to create entrepreneurs, like at all. School, like the public school system is set up to create worker drones, worker bees.
See, and the whole basis of the tax system is not to help the worker bees because the tax system wants middle income people to do all that kind of stuff. The tax system hates entrepreneurs because they
Right.
find a way around it. And
Yep.
like that, again, not stuff they tell you about or you're not
Right.
educated about it. And it's almost like they
Right.
don't want you to. But if I had a school based on the success of the people that leave, there's no way I would let you leave without having proper education in the real world of things as to how stuff is going to work. And right now, they're only worried about books. They're only worried about that stuff. And I don't know about you, but I've also heard of a lot of people from China and India that they're just like fast tracking AI and coding and all that other kind of stuff, and they're coming over here, and we're not doing it as much, but they're taking all these high end jobs in there because
Oh, but look at the H-1B visas. It's like, like they're
they
yeah.
can't do anything else though. They can't do anything else though. So even all of those people will still be reliant upon the physical workers to help their lives progress the way they need to. Right now with the mass deportations and stuff we're having, we're losing a lot of day laborers. Okay, well, it's only a problem if we don't have people here that will work, that will do those jobs. Even in my
Yeah.
business, right? Trey and Jack, they used to be framers. Let's walk around, man. Let's see how many white guys we have framing in the South Bay. It's not really a thing anymore, but it used to be. And framers make plenty of money. You should see the cost of lumber and labor now. Like Jack loses his head every single time he talks about,
Yeah.
can you believe how much they're framing for these
Yeah.
days? I'm like, it's very expensive. So if you're good at these trades, I mean, these guys have businesses, they have families, and they
Yeah.
work for themselves.
Yeah.
And if you're saying that all these people coming over, that they don't need housing, that they don't need all these rough trades and these things, no, we do. And it's only a problem now because our workforce has gone away because we've decided to be supervisors instead of workers. If we took back, our population took back making things, it wouldn't be such a big deal when things like this happen. And you wouldn't have a lot of
That that
people without
that goes
jobs.
back to, we don't want to pay more for things though. And in order for us to start manufacturing over
Have
here.
you seen the cost of everybody? See, like that's the one thing, right? Is we usually say, like, if you had to make an iPhone here, nobody
Yeah.
would afford that thing. Okay, well,
Right.
have you seen the price of the trades these days? It's not. I honestly don't think the prices really would go if people even knew how much all of our rough trades guys make and how much and the value of. I mean, some of it depends on where you work. I mean, we work in a very recession-proof area, right? But they're at the pinnacle of their professions. That's why we build multi-million dollar homes. Okay, well, these guys are the best of the best of what they do. So they get paid for it. All that takes is experience and knowing what you're doing. That's all you have to know. A lot of these guys, man, they're extremely successful. And a lot of them went through Scroc back in the day. It was a whole thing of nothing but trades and learning it. Now these guys are, in our multi-million dollar projects building homes. And if I told everybody else that's already here, like, hey, you learn how to do these things, if you like it and whatever else, you could have everything they have. And there's nothing, cabinet guys. Oh my God. Cabinet people are going to be one of the most expensive and demanded trades here in the next couple years, even right now. Nobody knows how to build a box.
Right.
And cabinets, and cabinets are a premium. They're super expensive, very labor intensive. And depending on the wood finishing, they're really, the markup is ridiculous there. So, I mean, there are a bunch of skills and a bunch of hard labor things that there are gaps in the supply that we could easily fill. And the prices wouldn't change, because they're already highly inflated in the areas that we do. So we think that it would cost a lot more. And I don't think, especially if you start that apprenticeship stuff where your labor cost is low, minimum wage, you're learning. You need to come out and do this, and we need to help you. El Camino has that construction project where they have a yard and they build a house every semester. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that.
I remember driving back from Koreatown when I was working in the office at LA Trade Tech. Every semester there'd be the empty dirt lot, and then by later in the semester there'd be a tiny, like a
Little tiny
mobile home sized
Yeah.
home that they built, and I would watch it every day driving down Flower every day, framing, and then like putting all the studs and putting all the stuff in, and then rough stuff go. It was amazing to
And then,
watch.
yeah. Where in the United States right now do we not have a housing crisis?
Yeah.
Well, if you're telling me that it's not in demand and it's not something the government could subsidize, it's not something that we need, I'd say show me where it's not needed. So I mean, but we're never going to have it because we're not being taught it. We like to stay inside and stay in front of a computer instead of go outside and work. And it's all because the school keeps us inside. I mean, I think the other thing too would be, right now we have a lot of skepticism when it comes to news sources and politics and everything else, but we're not educated on that stuff. I know that, I think that's the one good thing, not the one good thing, but one of the good things about college and extended education is that you have to learn to vet sources as you go, and you have to
Sure.
learn to have concrete sources, and you get exposed to more things, so you kind of know what's fake and what's real. And it's just like in having a government class that even just defines not only the Democrats and the Republicans, but the other like 7 or 8 major political parties that we have. I even
Yeah.
think that, whereas I don't believe in like a practicing religion in public school and stuff like that, but having a class that explains all of the religions and where they came from. I mean, I put it down as history because again, if you withhold it, well, then nobody knows anything. But if you have,
Study of religion is an interesting topic.
because in
Like,
college they separate it. Like they have,
Mm.
I literally had a class in college where it was, I think biology or something to that extent. Day one the teacher came in and said, there are aspects of this class that are going to counteract religion, the state of events, how long it's been, we got here. We deal with stuff in the real world in this class, tangible things. If you want to talk about religion, there is a intangible spiritual side of science, but this is not that class. So there was like a disclaimer before saying that, hey, if you have strong beliefs that this is how everything started, we are not going to discuss that. And
Yeah.
a lot of these things are going to directly counteract all that stuff that you deem to be true and right and all that. And but I mean, if you approach it in that way, that there's a spiritual way of the world and there's a physical way of the world, and this is the way that we define them. You can approach it intellectually and understand, in a broad sense where I think it makes sense. But getting to the place we are now, where you have just, I hate the word phobia because it's like widely used. Like phobia means fear, and I think that I a discussion for another time. I enjoy words and the definition of the word. I don't enjoy interpretations of the definition of the word. So like when it comes to like Islamophobia or anti-Semitism or like those kinds of things, I'm not afraid of any religion. I'm not afraid of like those types of things. And I think that fear and anxiety, all those things come from a lack of information and a lack of education. If people were taught, this is what these people believe, this is what this religion, this is how it started, this is where we are, this is why these people are disagreeing, there would be no fear. There would be no unknown as to that kind of stuff. There's so many things that we don't know and we're not educated on. Whereas if we were, maybe we wouldn't feel the way that we do.
Sure.
I don't think that we get to a more violent place with more understanding. I can't make that sentence make sense to me. So education has always been an extremely powerful thing, but it needs to be directed in the right way into the right things. And for right now, I think we're missing the hard skills of life. I don't think, I think we're prioritizing books and not the social fabrics of things. And
Sure.
I think it's a disservice. We're having a lot of kids that only go through school and then they get out of school and they don't know what to do, and they don't know how
Sure.
to help themselves, and they don't
Sure.
know how to provide for themselves. And I think it's not allocating again for the best use of their time. We're not preparing them well enough.
Sure.
And then the parents, if you're not filling in those gaps at home, we're not helping. You know, I really hope that there's something that could be done. I hope that what's happening over there is more universal, that we're doing better with it, So but I mean, for me, there are just a handful of things that I would change almost right away that I think would make things. Oh, my last thing too. A debate class should be mandatory. Absolutely, and I'm not even kidding. Right now it's a plague that people can't disagree without violence or dismissal, or you don't exist anymore, or I don't want you around me anymore. And it's like you're living in a world with people that have different experiences, different feelings of you, and you're not a more, you know, you're not a better person for alienating somebody or feeling bad about someone that does not agree with what you say. Everybody has the right, especially here, has the freedom to view things how they want, and you're not a morally superior person because you want to cut people out because they don't believe the same crap you do, or they don't have the same opinion as you do. And you know what debate is? I'm going to stand here, you're going to stand there, and we need to find a way. And I don't think we have that anymore. I debate across a wide range of topics. I would take, an entire semester of just a debate class to where people get better at disagreeing and agreeing to disagree and having respect for each other, and trying to find that middle point. That's the hardest part right now, is that we do not come together, but you know what, if we're not taught how, we never will.
Right.
I think debate is huge, and I think that's another thing that if we're not living in a climate right now that emphasizes that that's something we should be working on, it's not going to get any better.
I've seen a huge uptick in the number of online news sources that, like, what's it called, Ground News, and like the one that Jubilee uses,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
that will show you like blind spot indicators and like a topic, and it'll show you all the more conservative leaning, coverage on and all the more progressive coverage on it, so that you truly can see like what both sides are saying about it. So you're not getting a singular voice. And I think those types of feeds hopefully are going to become more prevalent.
I
And, let Fox News be crazy right. Let MSNBC and like CNN like do their like let everybody have their own perspective of it. But I think we now more than any time we need an aggregate. We need an aggregator to say like this is what these people say, this is what these people say, this is the issue, this is the black and white like information and data on this. Because we were before we had the ability to kind of do this. I think using AI to gather different sources and different points of view and different opinions to be able to see the full picture of something. I mean, that's like the you and I talking about stuff. I have a different lens than you do, and there have been times that I talked to you about things that I think I've gotten you to see a little bit more from my point of view, and vice versa. There's plenty of things that you've brought up. I'm like, okay, that is a good point. Um, yeah,
But that comes into a you and me coming from a different area and a different time where I had Toastmasters where I had to get in front of the class and talk about something. I had debate. I've been on baseball teams with 20 and 30 people that we had to come together and work on stuff. I went to Best Buy. I had to sell stuff. I had to be front facing of people
yep,
and sell things. There's not a
yep,
single thing in Best Buy that you will die without, which means I'm selling stuff that is not existential to your existence,
yeah,
which means, and you got to learn to talk to people. You have to learn to sell stuff. All these kids now, it's like, I think all of them, should be working part-time customer service where you're interacting with people on a daily basis so that you know what it is. And again, argue, don't fight, but argue and debate. The whole thing with Charlie Kirk, man, is he showed up to debate. He didn't show up to fight. He didn't show up to be violent. He was not violent to anybody physically, but he's going to say, I have my opinion and you have yours, and let's talk about it. And people could argue about his thoughts and feelings and all that kind of stuff, which is fine. But we shouldn't have less people showing up to debate. We should have more talking about, especially in college, when you're trying to figure stuff out and when you should be as open-minded as possible.
I just
You should
feel
be
like I
you
I
should
I
be
agree with
debating.
you, but the whole perspective of Charlie Kirk was doing that for attention and for fame. The
Could have been.
mechanics of what he was doing with everything that you like are pro what he was doing, having these conversations and talking to people. I'm all for that. Televising it and building a media empire on with the foundation of it being
Well, he wanted to be influential for sure.
that's the that's where I draw the line with it. I'm all for debate. I'm all for people coming together and talking about stuff, but the to to be able to edit, to be able to use and twist after the fact in post is I just don't
Which
agree
which
with.
is unfortunate because CNN and Fox, they all do that same shit too.
Yeah,
He's
of
no
course.
he's no different than the media people that do the exact same thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But you know what? You know, again, we can say that the means and everything else were a little whatever else, but posting it to show that someone's going to come out and someone's going to debate, and he doesn't control who walked up, you know.
Mm.
Um, but as far as like putting it out there, we're not going to agree. I don't care. So the big thing being, I didn't mind that they were pushing out that this guy's going to come and he's going to debate and showing people. Again, we can argue that aspect, but I don't mind it being broadcasted that people are going to come and they're going to disagree and we're going to have to talk about it. And
Sure.
but and again, it can be all done in a better way. That's why I'm saying in high school and stuff, you should have healthy debate in that way,
Yeah,
so that when all of a sudden someone comes to your campus and you don't like it, you know how to talk to that person, you know how to debate them, and realize that we're just having a conversation. There's
sure.
nothing that he's going to do that's going to affect me. Nothing that he says is going to bother me because it's all part of a debate. He's not going to get up out of his chair and run and smack me in the face. He never did that, and I'm not scared of what he said. What he said doesn't, it's not going to do anything to me, but we have to get in our eyes that, we need to have healthy debate. We always do. And right now we're having extremely unhealthy debate, but we don't know how. We're not taught how. So we're just screaming at each other. Again, education is a very powerful thing if we use it the right way. And I think, and it's hard to prioritize a lot of things, right? We have a lot of things we want to do and accomplish, but we need to stop worrying about the end game of jobs and that kind of stuff. And we really need to devote more to the social fabrics and the real world things that kids need to know when they leave. Otherwise, I think that we're not educating them properly enough for the responsibilities that they're going to have once they're on their own, you know?
Good talk, Justin.
Yeah. Looking forward to next week. I want to talk about what we were talking about before.
This is a good talk. I'm looking forward to next week.
Me too.
A good corner to you, sir.
Good corner to you too.